everyone, and welcome back to the VHS Tapes podcast. Today, me and Bax will be discussing the classic 1985 film Back to the Future. This movie is about a young man named Marty McFly and his eccentric scientist friend, Dr. Emmett Brown. Marty begins the film living in a just acceptable life. He has a family, but they're miserable and pathetic. He has a band, but according to the school, they're just too darn loud. He has a girlfriend, but his mom doesn't like her. Where he finds his peace is visiting the doc, who, does all sorts of strange experiments. But tonight he has a very special experiment happening. See, Doc has invented a time machine out of a DeLorean. After a demonstration, Doc and Marty are attacked by some terrorists who want their plutonium back, as Doc had given them a fake bomb. Doc is shot dead, and Marty escapes into the past by 30 years. He accidentally creates a new timeline where his parents never meet, and they never end up together. So while he must work with younger Doc from 1955 to get back home, he must also literally pull the strings of fate to get his parents back together, else he'd be erased from time. And with that, I'll hand you guys off to the actual episode. Hey everyone, and welcome to the episode. Bax is here once again. And today we're talking about Back to the Future. We will do episodes on each movie, but for now we're just going to do the first movie. Something I do like about the very start is all of the clocks. All the ticking, and I mean, it's fitting for a movie about time and all that. But I ended up having my own clock that I fixed. The internal mechanism, the gears were like plastic. They melted or something, so if you plugged it in, it just didn't work. So I fixed it. I put a new mechanism inside of it. And now it collects dust on my desk upstairs. So I'm gonna fix that sometime when I have a place to hang it.
Inspired. I want a clock like that too. That'd be kind of cool. Oh, Pope, I interrupted.
No, you're fine.
Here's my Bluetooth lag.
I was looking to see what the next thing I was gonna say. No, don't stop freaking out. I don't want to. My skirt's gonna be stupid.
I smell Patreon subscriptions. Oh wait.
No.
They're gonna be wholesome. Curses.
Yes, we do need to be wholesome.
Oh no. Well, I mean, if you just wore the Doc's mind-reading helmet, you would know that I would say something stupid to get you canceled. The thing is awesome, even though it doesn't work.
Max, it is true. You are the least wholesome person.
I am wholesome when it counts. And right now, it counts right now, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I still want that mind-reading helmet, though. I might make one.
You could probably make one out of some bullshit.
Well, what I do is I can print one piece at a time, right? Glue it together. So I've got this gigantic monstrosity.
You gotta make it out of something metal so it's authentic.
Oh,
and get some wires and stuff. It'd be really cool. Similar thing, I've wanted to make an R2 unit for the longest time, remote control and everything, but it will cost you about $600 to $1,000 to make one. So
it sounds like they can keep it.
It'd probably be cheaper to make a Darth Vader cosplay thing to just stick on a mannequin and have a Vader statue in my room. I already have the helmet. I just need a cape, which is just black fabric, and some suit and some shiny boots.
Oh, I get it. So what you're doing is you're going to dress up as Vader from the planet Vulcan, right? And just go and melt someone's brain with a stupid tape recorder. Make him bend him to your will.
Yes, and the hairdryer.
Oh, yes, the hairdryer. That's important.
So, yeah. Oh, so as you know, the camera pans around and stuff. The burnt toast hurts my soul, like on a deep level. And the spoiled dog food just slopping into a pile. It's just, ugh, no. Uh, and when I first got introduced to this movie, I want to say like 2004, 2005, something like that is the first time I saw it, somewhere around there. And after I watched the scene where Marty overloads the giant speaker, I would actually go up to our sound system and just slowly turn the dial up and like press every button. Thankfully, it wasn't on. Otherwise, I might have destroyed it. But yeah, I can't help myself to just do that like anytime there's something with a dial.
You know, recently I got myself, someone gave me this old THX grade speaker from like 2003. And now I wonder what happens if I were to play that scene on this gigantic subwoofer. The thing can pull out 280 watts, and now I'm very tempted to hook a guitar to it and see what happens.
Hmm.
I'm gonna die.
I suppose that's a science experiment for you to do sometime. It's probably going to go bad, though.
Now it'll be all right. I'll just go outside. My house might shatter, but I'll be safe.
There is a very sad thing. You know the shot. It's right after Doc calls Marty and is like, "Hey, don't use the giant speaker. It might overload." And then Marty it's like, "Damn, I'm late for school," and he goes on his skateboard adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Right as he leaves, like the little right when he gets onto the road, there's a little sad thing you can see in the background, which indicates like how time has passed. There's a Toys R Us sign, and like that store just doesn't exist except for Canada now.
I didn't realize it was a sign. Pooh, I must have missed that one.
I just noticed it when I was watching. And I'm like, like Toys R Us, to be honest, was overly expensive. It was a ripoff, but it was still a place to go as a kid because it was just like 98% toys. So it was nice. And honestly, I think the last time I went there was so long ago, I was getting a Bionicle.
I don't think I've ever been to a Toys R Us. I drove past one once on the interstate, but I don't think I've actually ever set foot in one.
There's one near me, and it became a furniture store when it shut down. And then it became something else, and now it's a gym. And that makes me sad. So, yeah, there'll be a segment after this where I go and explain like timeline shit. So there'll be some notes that kind of like refer to the original timeline. George is a complete wimp, and honestly, the whole family is pretty pathetic. But like that does get changed after the shenanigans. The
Spoiler
first, yes, we're. If you have not seen the movie by now, you've had. Let's see, the first one came out in '85, so that's 95, 2005, 2015. That's almost 40 years ago, and that hurts to say, even though I'm not that old.
Making money.
So,
movies were actually good. They didn't have weird CGIs. It was they had like a puppet on a string, and the doctor hit the button and goes.
Let's be honest. If the movie existed in today's time, the DeLorean looks great in CG because we saw that in Ready Player One. They had a DeLorean. It looked fucking awesome driving around. It would not have had the same feel for sure, but it's still very, very
There were
cool.
actually guys wanting to remake the first movie, but whoever owns the copyright to it is like, nah, we're not remaking this.
Yeah, I can't do it. Can you just slip off the middle finger for me? Because I can't.
This? Oh,
That's
do you
what
need
I
my
say.
hands? Here we go.
That's what I say to them. Yes. Yeah, close enough. Um. Now, once Marty escapes back to the past, I like how the Peabodys think he's an alien, particularly because the kid has a comic book that's like, wow, it looks identical to this guy in a suit here. And if you didn't know, Peabody specifically is a reference to Buddy and Sherman, which was an old cartoon about a time traveling duo, except instead of a mad scientist and a teenager, it's a very smart dog and some kid that he babysits. So, Marty stops at the cafe. I think he gets a coffee, or maybe it's tea. I'm not 100% sure.
He's like what does he say? Pope. It's so
the guy asked him like, "Hey, are you gonna order something or what?" And he's like, just give me a tab." But I don't know what a tab is supposed to be. Assume it's like a drink that existed back then or whatever.
I thought it was.
But he
was asking for.
The guy thinks like he means like a tab, as in like put it on my tab. So he's like,
Yeah.
you got to order something. I can't give you a tab unless you pay for something. You order something. So he's like, give me a Pepsi free, which means like probably like sugar-free Pepsi.
Yeah.
And the guy doesn't know what that is because it's not come out yet. So he's like, you want a Pepsi, kid? You better pay for it. And then he just asks, can just give me with something without sugar. And then he just like pulls a pre-made coffee or a tea out from under the counter. And he empties some change out, which would be post 1955 change. So if anybody found it, they would just assume it's counterfeit because it's got future dates on it. And also his guitar pick. He left his guitar pick behind in the past.
Oh no, he did, didn't he? I didn't even think about the money thing.
I never noticed that he left the guitar pick until I just watched it. Yeah, then I thought like somebody's gonna look at that change at some point and be like, how is this coin from like 1965? But they would probably you'd get two reactions. One person would just be like, oh, it's just counterfeit, and they put a wrong year on it. Or some nutcase would think it's from the future and actually be correct, but have no way of knowing, really. So yeah, Go ahead.
I just like how there was no butterfly effect when he created the skateboard. Like the chunks of wood that poor kid is just scooting across. He's like yeets it off into the air, and all of a sudden, nothing's in the world breaks. But now the dude who made the skateboard just lost his patent.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, there's plenty of other things that definitely. Can this controller stop doing that? It's really annoying. Yeah. But yes, where's my... Not a whole lot would have ended up changed, but I think once Marty catches up to George and takes his place as the one hit by the car, that's where problems start happening, because at that point he's replaced his dad's position of being the one that Lorraine cares for, and then she becomes infatuated with him, not knowing it's her kid.
See, but he could have solved the world's problems if he just becomes his own dad.
No, that's no.
I mean, it would work, wouldn't it? He'd have the same bloodline. He'd have the same last name. He'd just look a little funky.
No, stop that train of thought right now. Oh my god,
he could have saved his own life.
No.
Do you know how cool it'd be to have yourself as a son? You would know exactly what he would do.
No, you're no. Anyway, I get it. She has no idea. He cannot tell her. But it's got to be traumatic for him, especially later in the movie when she kisses him and he's just sitting there like... That poor Marty is just traumatized for the rest of his life. And he can't ever say a damn thing about it. Then at the dinner, I absolutely love Stella, who, I only got that from the subtitles, which is his grandmother, Lorraine's mom, says, "You look so familiar. Do I know your mother?" And he just literally gives Lorraine side eye and says, "Yeah, I think you do." It fucking made me really made me laugh when I just watched it. So then, then he meets 1955 Doc. You have to take advantage of the lightning strike on November 12th to power the flux capacitor. Marty simply needs to avoid literally anyone for the next week, but it's kind of late for that. Which is another point I'll bring up. Like, had he been lucky enough to not meet his father and had just gone straight to Doc's, and Doc had just been able to like keep him at his house out of sight, the timeline would have changed, but it would have been like 99% similar. The only thing that would have happened really is Doc would have had the knowledge of Marty. I mean, just like he does. Like he in this new timeline, he goes through that whole 30 years knowing he will eventually Marty, and he has to probably keep his distance and just let things happen to a certain point. But I'm sure he's still kept on the family just to make sure like everything's still going right. They're still gonna get married and have this kid because it's kind of crucial here. So now Marty does have to get his parents to get back together and do the thing eventually. But the next major thing Marty ends up changing after George says nobody on this planet can convince me to take Lorraine to the dance is dressing up, take the role of Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan. And since George eventually has his book published, this means in this new timeline, in the Back to the Future universe, Darth Vader of Star Wars would have a completely different name. Darth wouldn't even be a thing, probably. So, and in Star Trek, Spock's planet would have a different name as well. Because copyright. Theoretically.
This means Star Trek would win the nerd war. Without a name like Darth Vader, he'd just be guy in suit. Why? Yeah. From what I heard, like the way it's pronounced in like some other language, it's supposed to mean something like the Dark Father or something like that, but it wasn't intended. Is it Italian?
Yeah, something like.
So Vader would be this angry pizza man, right? He's got the giant, stereotype. He got a pizza cutter and whatever it is. Wait a second. I'm gonna get everyone canceled, aren't I?
Also, I think in some other language, like they also had to change the name in that language because it essentially meant Darth Toilet. So they had to change it.
Hold on now. Like, do you know how that would be kind of scary? You're going through the vacuum of space and this giant toilet's trying to get you. Like,
perhaps. So Arnie then helps him with a plan to have him get Lorraine angry at him, and then he'll show up, punch him, and then Lorraine will just be like, "Oh, you're so tough and sweet," and whatever. But this almost backfires because Biff shows up, rips Marty away. However, George shows up and manages to just develop, a set of balls and actually punch Biff out. And Marty nearly ended up erased during the dance. And I made some, like, goofy videos early when I started YouTube. They're no longer available because they were cringy as shit. But doing some of the I wouldn't say in camera. They weren't like CG or anything. It was just like in editing, an effect you could make. It's the way you could like do the thing how he had the hand in front of his face and disappeared. So I can actually tell you if you don't know how that was done. I can explain it. Do you have any ideas?
So I'd imagine that they'd get a prosthetic hand and shove it up in front of a camera. But is there a green screen in the 80s?
I think there was essentially like
older ones. They used blue screens.
They had blue screen for a while, but then they just got the green screen worked better. But no, it's his actual hand. But what they do is he sat there and just like did the like facial emotions, expressions. I mean, and then would have just like stuck a hand in front of the camera for the second shot, doing the little thing with his fingers, and then they just like add the effect of it fading out there, and then just paste that in front of it. So like I could do that. I could literally do that myself. Maybe not like how it like fades in different spots, but I could like have it like go semi-transparent at the very least. In just a few minutes. So where's my next note? Yeah, and that happens because some jerk cuts on the dance, but then George again musters up some courage, kisses Lorraine, and that kind of like really seals the deal for them. Marty doesn't vanish. The next change, which it was funny to actually look into this a little bit, when Marty plays Johnny Be Good 3 years before it actually debuts as a song, what was it? Marvin Berry is the character that lets the phone and like calls his. I think he said it was his cousin.
Yeah,
Chuck. Chuck Berry is the guy who actually made the Johnny Be Good sound, so he literally plays it to him. So now in this new timeline, he actually rips off Marty, ripping him off, which is kind of funny to think about. And after that, we have the time travel sequence. Everything goes wrong. Cables come undone. The starter fails. Everything literally comes down to the wire, like him having to plug it in at the last second. Very still kind of interested how Doc survived being shocked by lightning.
The Doc is probably built up on a resistance to electricity at this point.
That's a good point.
He's out there shocked. He's got that gigantic thing on his head to try to read thoughts, but it's powered by a plunger. So, or something.
Yeah. And then Marty arrives in the new 1985. Doc has read I forgot to write this. He wrote a letter to Doc, left it with him in 1955, explaining, "You're gonna die if you don't do something." He initially rejected it, but eventually, like, went for it, and got a bulletproof vest, so he survives in the timeline. And his parents are very happy in their marriage. Nobody's pathetic anymore, and Biff is just a car waxing guy instead of, an asshole. Well, he's still an asshole, but he's more chill. And then Doc heads to 2015 and returns the next morning to set up the sequel. And that's all I have to say about just explaining the movie and my thoughts on it. So anything you want to add before we get to the next segment?
Just the thing that, if he never went back in time, people pronounce gigawatt right. Now, because of this time shenanigan, everyone says gigawatt.
Interesting.
Or is it gigawatt? I'm pretty sure it's pronounced gigawatt.
I don't know. That's a question for Google later on. But yes, now our next segment is going to be some theories and explaining timelines. All right, it's time for a little theorizing. This will be interesting. So, being the original timeline, I'm going to refer to it as 1985 Prime. We can't really use 1985A as that because 1985A is actually referenced in part 2 for the alternate 1985. But there is still an alternate 1985 in this movie. So the original timeline, Doc back in 1955 gets the idea to make the time machine, and hang on, I gotta move my notes screen out of the fucking way. Somewhere, I think it said they met in like 1982, I think. So somewhere around there. The story I read was like Marty broke into his place, essentially, needing a tube. It was a story separate from the movie. He needed a tube, it was for some electronic thing, and Doc just happened to have a bunch of them because he bought all the stock out. And then they became friends after that. He was curious about his inventions. Doc needed like an assistant, so he kind of like gave Marty a job. Like he'd actually pay him a little bit, for helping him out with different things. So that's where they started. You get the time machine thing. Doc Brown's shot dead by terrorists, so he does die in the original timeline, which is pretty sad. Now, had Marty not interfered too much in the past and just come back, I think Doc would have been still dead. The Libyans would have recovered the remaining plutonium, if not some cops who would turn up to the crime scene and just, confiscated it. Marty might have hidden the time machine or destroyed it because no plutonium, it's useless. I don't think he'd have gone to the lengths just to try to go back and save Doc. Well, the lengths to steal it, because it would have been ridiculous for a teenager to try to steal plutonium from like a really hard, well-secured place or whatever. So he would have just gone on, carried on his life, and the Prime timeline would have pretty much carried on as normal, with minor changes. But that's not what happened. This brings us to the S timeline, which is what I'm going to call like what happens after he goes in the past. So way back after he time travels, it skews off into this little tangent to make a reference to the second movie. All of the things he does, he influences Goldie Wilson to become mayor. He meets Doc, and he literally tells him, "Your time machine, you're going to invent it. It's going to work." So now Doc's going to live that 30 years, knowing it's going to happen. He's probably going to keep tabs on the family to make sure that they actually go through everything and Marty's born. But to a certain extent, I doubt he would have been like fucking showing up like, hey, it's you yeah.
He comes up as a mailman on the door. He's like, "Hello, would you like to give your woman for Valentine's Day?"
Yeah, I think that would have been.
Might I suggest the following things over here?
Yeah, I think that would have been too much. Or just straight up like inquiring about this child. Probably would have been
dress up
weird.
as a doctor.
But at the same time, I think it might have been a little stressful for him because, like, unless Marty told him in the past, like, "Oh, we, like off camera somewhere, like we meet in 1982 and so on." If he doesn't know, he's probably going to be thinking like, the car's going to be ready by 85. This kid has not shown up yet, and I can't really interfere too much. When the fuck is he going to show up? And just 3 years before it happens, he finally first meets the kid. But he would have looked a little bit younger, of course. Like Marty's 17 in 85, so in 82 that would have made him
14.
14, yeah, he'd have looked a little bit younger. But yeah. So when he saves his father, that's the first major branch. George doesn't get hit. He doesn't spend the night in Lorraine's care. They don't end up going to the dance. Had this continued all the way and Marty had been erased, I think it would have actually created a time loop because... So, if I click, come on. It goes all the way forward, Marty not existing, and them, like, not getting together, essentially. Doc still makes the time machine. He doesn't have Marty there in Actually, yeah, I do have to call this 1985A because this is what doesn't happen. Did I draw an A properly? All right. Yeah, I can't see because I got all these fucking windows in front of me, so I can read my notes and monitor the OBS.
Got the lines.
Yeah, I'll even it out. There, are you happy?
Now it's curved.
I'm doing the best I can in virtual reality. It's very hard to draw with this gigantic pen, and I'm a very tiny person. I could be larger, but you know. Anyway, so what I think would actually have happened in this is, so without the distraction of having Marty with the camera, babysitting everything, he would have done the first test, and all right, thrown a couple of extra pieces of plutonium in the car, gone back. He would have had to interact with his past self because he wouldn't have been able to do this behind his back, and helped him get his parents back on track, which would eventually be a problem because then how can this happen? Doc would have gone back if Marty existed. So either it creates a paradox time loop or you effectively become a time remnant. Your original timeline no longer exists. So that's what Marty is. The original timeline doesn't exist. He's the only thing left from it. The original Doc is dead, so they only have the alternate Doc. But obviously, this didn't happen, so we'll just erase the A and put an S there, because that's the timeline we actually have. So, let's see. But anyway, the changes he did, did end up occurring. Hill Valley got a bit of an improvement. His parents have a better marriage. Family has a healthy dynamic. You also got to think it's kind of weird. He essentially replaces himself. He has no memory of these changes. Like, he only remembers the original timeline. He doesn't get the new memories. And the Marty of that timeline goes back to create yet like another branch timeline, and it just keeps cascading, but you don't see any of this. If you thoroughly think about it, that's what's going on. Because the Marty that he watches go back is not actually him. It's this alternate timelines Marty. And that's kind of where it gets a little fucked up. It's like these people are just overriding each other's timelines on an endless loop. They're all pretty much the same, except for the original. Because, think about it. The first thing he does is he hits the Twin Pines Mall, not the mall, he hits the tree, takes out the tree. So that's going to be a continuous thing. He would have always known it was Lone Pine Mall. And then if he even picks up on it, he's going to realize, I'm the fucking idiot that ran over the damn second tree. And other things. So yeah, original Doc is still essentially dead, sadly. He was totally gunned down. But yeah. Oh yeah. So now I know I'm pointing to nonsense. For context, my excess overlay Discord screen is over here with my notes that I've written, so I'm just schizophrenically looking into the distance. Bax cannot see this.
That dude from the meme. You like it.
Yeah. Also, yeah, come back here. You're out of frame. Yeah, there we go. We'll get the clicks that way with this thing. Yeah, you got to go to a little bit to the right. So yeah, I should have explained this. The camera actually cuts off here, right before where 1955 is written, and cuts off just after 1985 is written. So yeah, if you stay in the middle, you'll stay in frame.
Do you think this avatar should have pants? I just realized that now that people can probably see my booty.
It's fine. It's fine. There's worse avatars. I've worn.
People looking at my booty.
Here, I'll fix it.
Is this the sponsorship? We're advertising anti-booty blockers? Sponsored by El
Anyway.
Chicos Incorporated.
So, yeah, so I had written, I already kind of went off script and said this, but he had to have known the DeLorean would be finished by 85. The car first came out in 81, so he probably bought it like right away this time around. But yes, they didn't actually meet till October 2nd, 1982. And you gotta also think, Doc had to spend this entire time quiet about the fact that he knows he's eventually going to send this kid into the past by 30 years. But then, I think it was kind of a sweet, kind of wholesome moment. After Marty goes back in this and, original Marty runs over to check on him, he finally actually gets to see the version of Marty that he has not seen for 30 years. He's had this new kid, but he doesn't, it's not that particular Marty from that particular point in time that he has not seen for such a long time. Like that had to have been fucking stressful and like fucked with his head a bit because he couldn't tell him to avoid messing the timeline further. But yeah, the fucking relief he must have had when he finally saw him run up and like, it's been 30 years. I'm finally getting to see you. Whereas Marty, it was like 2 minutes.
Indeed.
So, yeah. Part 2 will probably be in season 4. So next year. I don't know when. But there'll be more of this because there's a lot more fucking nonsense happening in that movie of branch timeline bullshit. Like a lot more. Let me off the top of my head, there are technically 2 branch timelines in that movie that we can actually explore that actually happen besides the theorizing.
What about?
But hey, that's just a theory, a film theory.
But what if
I had to say it?
What if though? There's one final timeline, right? It's called the fan fiction timeline, okay? And in this timeline, I can't. How do you draw on this thing? And this.
What you gotta do? If you want to draw directly on it, you have to like tip it in, and when you see the white little dot, then it will draw exclusively on the board.
All right, so here's 1985, right? What's 17 years from 85? 72? No.
Wait, 17 years after 1985?
No, before 85.
1985 minus 17. 1968.
All right, so here we go. 1968. The fan fiction theory, right? When Marty births himself because he's his own father.
No,
so 1867. I meant whatever year you said.
18 is over here. It's 19.
We'll pretend that's a 9. Whatever year this is. Marty and Lorraine have this kid named Martin, right? So now... They could just bypass all of this because Marty say don't talk to the doc or else you won't exist, and they're all live happily ever after.
That's not how this works.
There's a timeline where he is his own father.
He would not be his own father. That's not
no, it just erased. I guess you're right. It just erased apparently.
Oh my god. Thank you. Phew.
But think about it. You could be your own dad.
Why are you so obsessed with this theory?
Because, he could go in this, I don't want to do this. But then there's the other theory. Let's say he can't be his own grandfather, can he? Yes, he can. Wait, hold up. He could go back even further in time, up to 1922, and meet his grandma, right?
And then that would be this way, way over here, past the edge of the chalkboard.
Oh, okay. So let's imagine that this is. Let's just imagine this is over there. Right?
I'm just gonna put a stop to this right here.
But then he could meet himself and tell him that he could meet himself.
No, Bax, no. No.
After he births himself, after he births his dad, he can go back to the
Stop it. Get out of here.
He could work.